and Muhammad thought that he was demon possessed and tried to take his own life. So now you look at those encounters and you compare them. And if you can tell me that you, as a person of intellect, which you sound like a smart guy to me, if you're telling me that you have no problem with that, then there's nothing more that we have to say to one another.
Is like this question here. Is Jesus God? That's essentially the topic, right? Is Jesus God? And so what I would say is that you as a Christian have a dogmatic stance in the affirmative. I as a Muslim have a negative dogmatic stance. Again, right, the opposite stance.
Sure.
And so your stance is based on a combination of, 100 different verses, church history, various scholars that have made a statement. You add up all of these data points together and you get your outcome that we have taken this stance. I do the opposite of that within my tradition. What it comes down to this topic of like proving it. I don't know what we would appeal to for me to prove it to you or for you to prove it to me. And I think that's the reason that most people end up just staying where they are. Like a Christian and a Muslim will both watch the same video. The Muslim thinks that the Muslim speaker won. The Christian thinks that the Christian speaker won. And that's the end. I don't really see any progress in that.
Correct.
And so when you say, can you prove it to me? I would ask the clarifying question, what do you mean by prove it to you?
The proof it can take any variety of forms, my brother. I'm telling you, is there anything?
What do you mean by proof?
Anything? Do you have any manuscripts? Do you have any evidence? Do you have? I'll even take anecdotal, subjective evidence. Something from you that tells you that Jesus is not God. At this point, I don't care. You are right in one thing, is that there is too much confirmation bias out there in the world, but here's the problem that I have with that. I don't know how confirmation bias has affected you in your life, but I haven't been Christian very long, just so you know. The reason I am a Christian is because I spent years studying. I've been in and around the Middle East, okay? I've been to many other countries, and in my military career, I was privileged to see many things. Right? I'm not, especially religious practices and culture and the way that they interact, right? I've looked at the history of things. I looked at Muhammad, right? I looked at Krishna. I looked at Jesus Christ. I looked at all these things, not having anyone, because my parents were supposedly Christian. Believe me when I tell you, they were not good examples of what Christians should be. So to me, it was all right. So to me, it was all garbage anyway. I was like, whatever. It was only after literally, I would say probably over 20 years of experience and research and reading and studying, comparison, watching debates, and looking at the end, where does everything stand when the smoke clears? Which has stood more scrutiny? Which has withstood more scrutiny? Which has withstood the test of time, right? When I look at the Bible, when I look at God, when I look at Jesus Christ and his ministry, and you look at the effect that this man has had on his existence he only had his ministry for 3 years, but the effect that he had on the world is insurmountable, right? Muhammad didn't have that effect. None of the other
That's debatable.
No, it's not debatable, and we can get into that if you want. But Muhammad didn't have that effect. Okay, Jesus Christ is literally. Let me dissuade you of that right now. If the Quran could have stood on its own, it wouldn't have mentioned biblical characters, including Jesus Christ, as much as it did. But it did. The Bible.
Well, hold on, but the first claim, just so I can understand it, you're saying that Jesus has had a very meaningful impact on the world, and you think that Muhammad has not had as far as influentiality. Like what are you referring to there? I'm referring to
everything in totality. I'm referring to the fact that when you even look at, you asked me a question, right? So again, because you're asking me the question, so I'm answering you. When you even look at the foundational event that started Islam, if you look at that and you look at it intellectually, right? And you compare it to the interactions that the angel Gabriel had with biblical figures, and you look at every one of those interactions in detail, and then you compare the very same supposed angel and the interaction that he had with Muhammad in that cave. If you, as a person with a thinking brain, can look at that interaction and think that that is the same spiritual entity that Muhammad encountered, the same one that was encountered by Mary and Joseph and others. And you're going to tell me that Muhammad and his interaction and wanting to take his own life and being squeezed to the point of almost suffocation and being tortured and openly declaring that he felt like he was possessed. If you're going to sit there and tell me that intellectually that you can think that that is the same Gabriel, that is an actual angel of light that made Muhammad feel that way, and you're going to sit there and say, yes, and therefore I do believe that he was a messenger of God, you're absolutely right. There's nothing that you and I can say to one another that's ever going to convince the other that what I'm trying to tell you is true. Because all you have to do is be able to read and say, there's no way that Gabriel grabbed Muhammad, squeezed him, made him feel like he was possessed, made him feel like he wanted to jump off of a mountain, made him feel like he was so cold that he asked that they put blankets on him, right? In the middle of the desert, mind you.
Can I say something?
Sure.
Okay, so the reason that I find these to be kind of difficult arguments to follow is, and I think there's a lot of bias, both Muslim side, Christian side. I think that they're both very biased when interacting with the other. So, for example, I believe truly as a human being that you would accept that it's possible for an angel to come in one form and another form. Like, I don't believe that you would deny that possibility. However, when it comes to using that as a talking point against Islam, for you, it's a convincing argument. And I think Muslims do the same thing when debating against Christians as well. I think that they employ a similar tactic as well. I'm not saying that one is worse than the other. I'm saying that for me as an individual, someone says, oh, the character of Gabriel in this encounter is different than the character of Gabriel in a different encounter.
In every encounter, not in this encounter.
It's like you would agree that the angel has the capacity to act in different ways with different people. I think it's a low tier argument.
It's not a low tier argument if you look at the fact that I've actually looked at all of his other encounters with biblical figures and his right. So here's the thing. You're talking about the fact that over a span of thousands of years, Gabriel acted one way, and then for some reason 700 years after the crucifixion, he came in and acted like a demon. So in your mind, hold on, stop, because you came in, hold on. No, it's not about changing. That's first of all, that's a category error. Okay, God is not God. Yeah, it is a category error because first of all, you and I don't have the authority to judge God's judgments. We're talking about two completely different things. You're talking about the angel Gabriel and God. So let's start there. Okay, now you can think whatever you want about my argument being low tier. But at the end of the day, I noticed that Muslims always do this. That there was a Muslim the other day who insisted that we stop talking about it because he couldn't explain it, right? You're essentially doing the same thing by trying to insult the form of the argument.
Exactly.
The point is that the entirety of Islam was built on Muhammad's encounter with what he thought was the angel Gabriel in that cave. And I'm telling you that through actual intellect, if you read all of Gabriel's interactions with human beings, you guys always sit there and make the insinuation that, oh, well, yeah, he can change, except it makes absolutely no sense. That's special pleading. You're essentially trying to say, well, you know what? Yeah, it's an angel, so he can change however he wants, but he never did that. So why would he act differently with Muhammad than he did with anybody else? Explain to me what's disingenuous about it.
Yeah, it's disingenuous because it's not an argument that follows by logical or scriptural necessity. It's an argument that you find to be indicative of something that you think indicates some kind of plausible explanation for something. But for example, you wouldn't problematize it if I said to you, well, God appeared for thousands of years in the Old Testament as a unipersonal God and then changed into being a tripersonal God in the New Testament. Like you wouldn't problematize that. You would say that, yeah, God had not revealed himself in the Trinity at that time.
Again, category error. We're not talking about God. We're talking about the angel Gabriel. You continue to appeal to God and his behavior and his judgments.
But why would the angel Gabriel not be able to act differently in different encounters?
Because it makes absolutely no sense. You guys continue to appeal to this, and it makes no sense.
It doesn't make sense, but
it makes no sense. What would be the reason for it? What would be the reason?
God sends his angel and tells him to interact in whatever way that God tells him to. I'm asking you, does an angel have the capacity to act in a certain way? Of course.
Again, you're appealing to a fallacy. You're asking me. Don't appeal to me. It doesn't matter what I think an angel could do. What? Yes, you absolutely are, because you're asking me if an angel could change the way that he interacts with people. It doesn't matter, because when you look at the way that it's broken down, here, I'm going to share something with you.
Okay.
Because maybe I'm just not being clear. Okay, you are talking about an angel of light, right? You're talking about Muhammad being tortured literally for what reason? What reason would the angel Gabriel have for squeezing him, making him feel like he can't breathe, making him feel like he wants to take his own life? There would be absolutely no reason for that, right? Now, I know that you're not saying it.
Say that, sure.
Okay, no, I'm not saying it. I'm saying it according to your own Islamic sources.
Yeah, but you're asking for what's the reason. I would say that I, from an Islamic perspective, and you from a Christian perspective, will find yourself in this category numerous times where you just say that's how God did it.
Okay,
there is no why did it happen that way. It's just the way that it happened.
And the fact that you don't want to ask the why is just intellectual dishonesty, right?
No, but it's not that I don't ask the why. I would say that as a religious person, all of us will end up at this question: why did God do this in this certain way?
Well, here,
and the answer
so
will be,
I'm gonna.
You can't ask that.
So
That's
I'm
what God wills.
No, I can ask it. And you know what? And Jesus Christ tells you to ask in the Bible and tells you to make sure that you're looking. So the fact that a Muslim just told me that I can't ask just goes to show why we're on opposite sides of the fence. Now,
no, biblical. Okay, so
here,
that is just that.
Here, I'm going to show everybody exactly what I'm talking about, because Muslims don't want you to ask these questions and say you don't have the right to ask these questions. No, and I'm telling you that we 100% do have. We do have the right to ask these questions, right? So if we're looking at the biblical Gabriel, if you look at Daniel, Mary, and Zechariah, what is the common theme? He comes in with clarity. He never causes confusion beyond awe. He speaks in full sentences. He clearly identifies himself as a messenger of God and is named directly multiple times in Scripture. If we're looking for examples, Daniel 8:15 through 17, Luke 11 through 19, Luke 1:26 through 38, where Gabriel is told, make this man understand the vision. He says he appears to Zechariah with a message from God. He announces the birth of Jesus to Mary calmly and clearly, right? Now let's compare that to the Islamic Gabriel, okay? The one that appeared to Muhammad. No self-identification as Gabriel in the first encounter. Sure. He doesn't say, peace be upon you, or identify as a messenger from God. He physically assaults Muhammad and squeezes him until he can't breathe. You can reference Sahih Bukhari 6982, Ibani Shak 106 and 107. And Muhammad thought that he was demon-possessed and tried to take his own life. So now, you look at those encounters and you compare them. And if you can tell me that you, as a person of intellect, which you sound like a smart guy to me, if you're telling me that you have no problem with that, then there's nothing more that we have to say to one another. Because God's angels are not going, God's angels are not going to just come in and act like a demon and then not give any clarity. What is the main theme that Gabriel always gave to people that he appeared to? Clarity, clarity, clarity. He did not give that to Muhammad.
Yeah.
He didn't.
What it sounds like, what your argument sounds like to me, I'll try to recap it. Let me know if I'm right or wrong. You're saying that Gabriel has a consistent character, and we've witnessed it in a few different interactions.
Correct.
And it differs then the interaction with the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. What I'm saying to you is that does not present any logical problem in any way, shape, or form. Now, you can say it's different. Sure, I can agree that it's different. But I don't see why that would compel me to say there must be something really off here. I would say that the angels have this capacity to instill fear.
Then it goes to your inability or unwillingness to see it. I'm giving you the comparative process, right? It's not for me. Sure. First of all, this isn't even what the conversation was about. It was about Jesus being God, sure. Right? Now we ended up on this, and I don't care. It's fine. It doesn't matter to me one way or another. But here's the problem. You're saying to me, and again, you're special pleading and saying, well, I don't see an issue. That's fine. You wouldn't see an issue because you know that if you decide that you want, if you were to say for a second, hey, you know what, there is an issue here, now you have a problem because you know that this event is the foundational one that the rest of your religion is built upon. So of course you're going to be worried about that. I would be too if I was you.
No, not at all. there was hundreds of other interactions with Gabriel. You would like it. Let's say we got rid of this interaction. We said, okay, we're going to toss it out.
Hold on. Stop.
Yeah.
The problem with what you're saying is that I don't care what the other interactions are, because as I explained to another Muslim brother the other day, you want to look past the first event because now this person, or this spirit rather, excuse me, has successfully convinced Muhammad that he is an angel of light. To be completely honest with you, I don't have any issue with Muhammad because I feel like he probably didn't know better, probably thought he was doing the right thing, and therefore said, you know what, I'm going to listen to this guy because I guess he is Gabriel, and therefore did whatever it was that what he thought Gabriel wanted him to do. Here's the problem. You don't get to just say, hey, you know what, it doesn't matter because the other events. No, you don't get to say that because the foundational event is extremely rotten to the core. That's what I continue to try to explain to people.
You won't admit to yourself that religion by necessity is dependent upon special pleading.
Okay,
I would say that Muslim,
but brother,
Islam, and Christian have the same,
not only are we so far off topic, you're showing exactly, you're doing exactly what the Muslim brother the other day was doing, which is that I'm showing you exactly why I have a problem with even Muhammad as a messenger, and we were talking about him comparatively to Jesus. No, there's no.
You don't really have a problem. That's the point. You don't really have a problem with the underlying philosophical concept at hand. You don't have a problem with it. That's why I'm saying it's disingenuous on your part.
Well,
because you
that's
don't
fine,
have
and you're welcome to your opinion. But what I feel is disingenuous is when someone continues to look at something and say, "Oh, but there's no problem with that," even though you're looking at all of the other. Hold on. No, it's not because you continue to just want to overlook it. That's not a good argument, nor is it an intelligent. It's not an intelligent. Yes, it is. That's exactly what you said. What did you say when you said, well, there was other encounters if you just look at those? No, you don't get to just look at the other ones. Hold on, stop. You're not. Look, at the end of the day, like I said, we're just going to keep talking past each other because you're not understanding what I'm saying. I only have a few minutes left and you're just not. You're not seeing what you're doing and you're being intellectually dishonest. And as much as I appreciate the conversation, I'm not going to get off topic this much. I don't like being off topic like that.